Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing this Zelos Abyss 3. There have been two different Abyss versions come out previously. This one completes the trilogy, and it is an absolute beast. Well, actually, that's kind of an understatement. This thing is a tank. It's a battleship. It's an aircraft carrier on your wrist. It is incredibly impressive. I got the stainless steel version with the Meteorite dial, Meteorite bezel, but there are some other versions with plain colors. There's bronze versions. There's a sub-seconds version that has a turbine for the form of the sub-seconds. That's really interesting. And I'm going to link Zelos's website here in the description. You guys can go check those out. And be aware that there will be a price increase coming on March 1st. So the first people to order these and get them, you're going to get a substantial discount. This one, as shown here with the Meteorite configuration, is $749. After March 1st, that goes up to $950. Now, Zelos, they are one of my personal favorite micro brands to feature. I've featured many Zelos over the years here, and I like what they bring to the table because for the price point, you know, sub $1,000, and generally between $400 and $1,000, they bring a lot to the table when it comes to the fit and the finish, the details, the movement, the bezel action, and all of that. And that is completely in keeping with this latest release here, the Abyss 3. So let me begin by placing some dimensions here on the screen where you guys can see the massive height of the watch. Now, I know some of you are going to be going, well, Bruce, this thing is just wild. It's unwearable. It's unwieldy. But that's by design. This thing is 19 millimeters in height, because Zelos is putting 3,000 meters of water resistance on here. Now, is this practical for a daily wear watch? Probably not. If you tried to wear this every day, I would imagine you would get wrist fatigue, and you definitely could not fit this under a dress cuff. Now, this is intentional from Zelos. They're pushing the boundaries on what you can expect from a sub-$1,000 diver in a micro brand, and they're showing off their capabilities. 3,000 meters is 100 times deeper than the safe recommended diving depth as put forth by PADI, the Professional Association of Dive Instructors for safe scuba diving or air diving. So 3,000 meters is just, it's wild. It's kind of obscene, but it's pretty cool that they've been able to do that. So the height, this is part of the design language. This is planned for. It's not haphazard. It's not a mistake here. So yes, this is a big boy. This is a tall watch. For reference, my wrists are just a hair over 7.25 inches in circumference. And I will say the diameter doesn't bother me. The crown at the 4 o'clock for the movement and the helium release crown at the 2 o'clock don't obtrude. They don't present any hot spots. The bracelet width is average at 22 millimeter. The lug to lug is decent at 51, but really the height is where this thing really stands out, and you feel the weight of the stainless steel. This is a heavy piece, a hefty watch. And you guys can see the finishing is sharp, and we have a high double dome sapphire crystal with inner anti-reflective treatment. And outside of that, you'll see the Meteorite bezel insert, which I've yet to see any brand put Meteorite as the bezel material. And keep in mind that this is set under a sapphire crystal, so you're not going to be scratching it and marring that really cool blend of metals or the luminescence here. Now, while I'm talking about luminescence, Zelos is utilizing Superluminova C3X1, so it is incredibly potent, very good longevity, and you guys can see here, it's just dang impressive. And you can't mess up what the hour hand is, what the minute hand is, and what the seconds hand is. I mean, everything is very clean, very easy to read, and that luminescence is just awesome. Now, you'll also notice on the twin set of screw-down crowns, they're signed, and that signature is loomed. So the bottom one is for the movement. There's the Zelos logo. The top one is your helium release valve, in case you actually take this to those crazy depths that it's rated to. And you guys can see this is signed with HE, the designation for helium, which is pretty fun to see. Now let's take a look at the dial. We'll go in on a macro level and take a look at the detail work. Now, a lot of times when I'm seeing a micro brand, sometimes there's rough printing, sometimes there's dust or particulates in the dial, But with Zelos, as you guys can see, this is very clean, very sharp. The printing is crisp. The polishing on these faceted applied markers looks really good. And this Meteorite texture is very visually dynamic. And I like looking at this on a high level of magnification and seeing the cleanliness here. This is a positive in my eyes. Now, Zelos is utilizing a Sellita SW200. They use a version of the Sellita SW200 on their sub-seconds versions that you guys can see again on that linked website. But it's nice to see a Swiss-made Sellita movement, and this one is running at plus 2.5 seconds per day for me, which is very impressive. Now, when you're spending over $500 on a micro brand, I find it a little disappointing when you get a Miyota or you get an NH35 from Seiko, or even if you get like a fossil-made movement. I like seeing a Sellita or an ETA if I can get it. I think that's adding to the value proposition when you're spending that between $500 and $1,000, like this Abyss 3 falls into that price tier. So I think there's a good choice of movement here for this watch. Now let me show you the packaging. You do get a leather travel watch roll here. Mine is done in gray. There's a nice microfiber suede finish on the interior. There's multiple pockets. You guys can see that there is a complimentary rubber strap if you want to take this off bracelet and put it on rubber. And I always like the fact that we're getting machined metal warranty cards, which is a nice touch. Everything sits in a wooden presentation box. It's not a super high quality wood box, but hey, I think it's nicer than getting a hardened cardboard like what you get from Seiko. Now let's close the video with a few things. I'm going to show you the tactile elements like the crown and the bezel action, and I'm going to talk about negative aspects. So the crown is actually, it's really nicely machined. The unthreading is pleasant, and then you get this very powerful, distinct pop as the crown comes out, and you can wind that Sellita movement very smooth. In fact, a little smoother than what I found on some Oris, which usually uses a Sellita movement. So I like the action here. The threading is very easy to use. Same with the helium release valve at the 2 o'clock position. This is the bezel action. There's a lot of travel here for your fingers to grab hold. There isn't a whole lot of resistance needed for you to turn the bezel, and each click is very precise. There's no back play, and yes, this is unidirectional, and there is 120 positions. So overall, I think the bezel action is very satisfying for this price point. Now let's talk about negative elements. What would be these? As I've spent time with this Abyss 3, there have been two things that I've noticed from wearing the watch. Now the first one is going to be on the end link here. You guys can see a raised center link with a polished edge here and a brushed top of the link, but the transition between the two finishes is a little wiggly. And it's not super sharp or clean. It doesn't have a good line of delineation. That is something that I noticed. Now the next thing is a little bit more severe, and that's found on the clasp. Now I like the design of the clasp. I like the look. I think it melds with these short H-link links that have a raised polished center section very nicely. I like the sign logo cut out here on the flip lock, but you guys will notice in order for this to be secure, that flip lock has to be engaged. Now we have twin pushers here that you engage to pull the clasp off. And I don't know if this affects all of the clasps on the Zelos Abyss 3 or just maybe a couple, and I was one of the unlucky few that got this. But you guys can see I don't actually need to compress these twin triggers in order to pull the clasp apart. So it actually can fall off on its own unless that flip lock is engaged. So there can be a possibility for bracelet failure here while you're wearing this behemoth if you don't have that flip lock engaged. Now again, I don't know if this affects all Zelos Abyss 3, but it is present on this version that I'm presenting to you guys. And on that note, let's close the video. I want to thank Zelos for sending this in. I am impressed with the watch. No, it's not a daily wear piece. It is kind of unwieldy, but it is impressive, and I love the detail work. I love the luminescence here in low light conditions. I like the bezel action, the Meteorite. This is a fun one to wear, and I've really enjoyed wearing it. So again, guys, the link to Zelos' website is in the description. Be aware of that price increase on the 1st of March. Reach out with any questions you may have, and I'll see you in the next video.